They tried to hush me, not because truth is lethal, but because once you hear it, you'll never unhear it. Act on it, and the entire landscape of women in your life tilts. How she speaks, how she watches you, how she worries about losing you. Everything flips. There's an unwritten code women use to stay in command. A silent playbook that turns your doubt into their leverage. They train you to chase approval, to mistake cold pauses for connection. But a man who wakes up, who spots the switch that rewires the game, is a man they can't cage. No more chasing. No more pleading. No more late-night audits of what did I do wrong. You finally read her moves for what they are: control wrapped in affection, security disguised as devotion. The instant you refuse to play, when you yank away the attention she once wielded like a weapon, she feels the shift. You are colder, steadier, locked on purpose. Explanations become absence. Noise becomes silence, and that silence, it scares her senseless, because the power just slipped from her hands into yours. This is the pivot she dreaded: a man who governs himself. Once you see it, women can't run the old playbook. They know it, and they hate it. Silence is a mirror to her ego, echoing boundaries louder than speeches. The first night you don't reply, her chest tightens. The second day you stay on mission. Her thoughts spin. Presence without pursuit is a rare scent. It lingers longer than words and can't be bought. It pulls her back again. Too many men walk this earth believing one lie, that in order to be loved, they must be perfect. They think they need the right words, the right career, the right body, the polished smile, the perfect plan, just to be worthy of a woman's attention. But here's the truth: no one told you. She's not looking for your perfection. She's not keeping score of your resume. What she craves, sometimes without even knowing it, is something rarer: your presence. And I don't mean showing up physically. I mean being there, emotionally, energetically, unshakably. Presence isn't about constant texting. It's not flowers every Friday or planning the perfect date. It's not sacrificing your peace just to keep her happy. You think that's love? You think that's effort? But to her, it's noise. Because if your spirit isn't rooted, if your energy is chasing validation, she may smile, but she doesn't feel safe. She may listen, but she doesn't trust it. She may stay, but she doesn't soften. You could be sitting right next to her, saying all the right things, playing the role to perfection, but if your heart is begging in silence, if your mind is pleading for her approval, she feels it. She won't say it, but her body knows. Her intuition whispers, this man doesn't truly see himself. And when a man doesn't see himself, she can't trust what he sees in her. Real presence is quiet. It's calm. It's not afraid of silence. It doesn't rush to fill empty space with empty words. It listens, not because it's anxious to please, but because it's grounded enough to care. It looks at her without fear. It hears her without losing center. It says, I am here, and I'm not performing. And that changes everything. A man with presence doesn't compete. He doesn't chase. He doesn't explain himself over and over again. Because when a man knows who he is, there is no competition. His silence carries more weight than noise. His absence leaves a bigger imprint than attention. She remembers him, not because he flooded her with messages, but because his stillness stayed with her. You see, when a man shows up present, truly present, he awakens something deeper in her. Not fear, not performance, but her feminine. She feels safe. She feels seen. She feels like she can breathe around him, because for the first time, she's not being watched like a prize. She's being witnessed without judgment, without expectation, without noise. And, in that presence, she begins to open, not because he made her, but because he made space for her. But most men miss this. They're too busy trying to prove they're enough, trying to impress, trying to perform. And in doing so, they trade their stillness for strategy. They lose the one thing that would have made her stay, their peace. That peace is what she needs. That stillness is what she longs for, and she doesn't even know it until she feels it. So this isn't a trick. This isn't a manipulation technique. This isn't about getting her attention. This is about coming back to yourself, the man you were before the noise. Before the world told you to earn love, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. And once you are, she'll feel you, and she'll never forget you. Let's talk about energy. Not the loud kind that shows up in over-the-top gestures or designer suits. Not the kind that tries too hard to be seen. I'm talking about the kind of energy that doesn't speak, but speaks volumes. The quiet, invisible force that enters a room before you do and tells everyone exactly who you are, especially her. You may not realize it, but your energy is always communicating, even in silence. It's teaching people how to treat you. You can't fake it. You can't force it. You can't overcompensate your way out of it, because you are what you carry. If your energy is needy, uncertain, always trying to please, always looking to be liked, she feels it. She doesn't need to say anything. She just reacts. She tests you. She pulls back. She gives less than she takes. She pushes not to destroy you, but to measure how far you'll bend just to keep her. And if you keep bending, if you shrink yourself to avoid confrontation, if you keep tolerating behavior that drains you just so she'll stay, she may stay, but her respect won't. She won't even know why. She just starts to pull away. Not because you failed her, but because you failed you. A man who doesn't honor his own boundaries can't be trusted to honor hers. That's where energy becomes frame. Frame is the invisible structure you walk in. It's the emotional line in the sand, not in your words, but in your posture, your tone, your calmness. When you carry your standards like armor, when you walk with clarity about what you will and won't allow, the whole dynamic shifts. Suddenly, she's not testing you for power. She's adjusting to your presence, not because you demanded it, but because she feels the strength of a man who doesn't fold. She asks herself, am I worthy of this space? That's when she starts rising or disappearing, and either one is a win for you. But here's where most men fall. They don't believe they have that kind of influence. They give their power away with every apology they don't owe, with every silence in the face of disrespect, with every message to a woman who only replies when it's convenient. They accept the mood swings, the coldness, the manipulation, all because they fear being alone more than being disrespected. And the longer you tolerate it, the more you train her to believe it's okay. Okay to take without giving. Okay to speak without care. Okay to show up half-hearted, because you'll always be there. But here's the brutal truth. A woman cannot love a man she does not respect. And she cannot respect a man who cannot protect his own energy. Not protect her. Protect himself. His peace. His purpose. His values. His emotions. When a woman senses that you are emotionally grounded, that you don't need her chaos to feel alive, that you can say no without shouting, and walk away without theatrics, she notices Her feminine either rises to match your masculine, or it collapses. And either outcome reveals everything, because you are no longer available for emotional games, just to feel wanted. Your energy is your armor. It tells her you don't get to throw your moods like weapons. You don't get intimacy without effort. You don't just receive. You contribute, or you go. And when you live in that energy, you stop teaching women to use you, and you start teaching them to value you. There comes a point in every man's life when he has to stop justifying his soul, stop explaining his intentions to people who already made up their minds to misunderstand him, especially to the woman who decided she could treat him carelessly and he'd still stay. That moment, when you finally stop chasing understanding, is sacred. It marks the beginning of your rebirth. Because here's the truth most men never hear. She heard you the first time, when you said you loved her, when you said you were hurt, when you said, "This isn't working for me." She heard it all. She just didn't respond. Not because she didn't understand, but because she didn't fear losing you. That's the part that stings. Because deep down, you believed that if you just explained enough, she'd see your heart. That if you poured out your feelings clearly enough, she'd finally choose you differently. But that's not how it works. So, you start over-explaining. You text more. You write paragraphs. You send voice notes full of emotion, hoping she'll finally hear the pain behind your words. But instead of getting closer, she grows colder, distant, because the more you reveal, the more she realizes she still holds control. You've shown her just how far you'll go for someone who won't even meet you halfway. And here's the twist: you think this is vulnerability. You think it's noble, honest, rough. But it's not vulnerability if it's not respected. It's self-abandonment. It's throwing your heart at someone who's already stepped over your boundaries and hoping they'll now honor them, but they won't. So what's the shift? You stop explaining. You stop defending your worth. You stop trying to convince someone who benefits from keeping you confused. And you start disappearing. Not as a game, not to hurt her, not to manipulate, but as an act of self-respect. You leave not with chaos, but with clarity. You don't slam the door. You don't announce your departure. You don't throw ultimatums. You simply walk, quietly, completely, with dignity, because when a man disappears in silence, not from anger, but from realization, it echoes, it lingers, it haunts, not because he's playing hard to get, but because he's finally hard to reach. She checks your profile. She scrolls through old messages. She notices you didn't block her. You just stopped caring. You became unavailable not out of pettiness, but out of alignment. You're not walking away from love. You're walking away from disrespect, from confusion, from emotional poverty. You're not abandoning her. You're choosing you. And in that choice, you shift the entire dynamic. You're no longer the man who begs. You're the man who left without slamming doors because he didn't need to prove anything anymore. And by the time she realizes what she lost, you're already gone, already healing, already building a life so whole, so full, she no longer fits in it. So the next time you feel tempted to explain again, to send one more message, to justify your love, pause. Remember this: your silence is your final word. Your absence is your loudest answer. Let her wander. Let her feel your distance. Let her sit in the emptiness she created with her choices. Because you didn't disappear to punish her. You disappeared to protect your peace. And that, brother, is power. Men, hear this clearly. You weren't born to orbit a woman's world. You weren't placed on this earth to adjust to her moods, to chase her approval, to revolve your identity around her attention. That's not love. That's emotional slavery. And far too many men today are trapped in that cycle, waking up every morning, wondering what version of themselves they need to be to keep her satisfied. But here's the forgotten truth. What about you? What about your fire, your goals, your path? Because whether she admits it or not, deep down, a woman fears the man who doesn't need to be controlled. A man consumed by purpose is dangerous. Not because he's reckless, but because he's grounded. He isn't swayed by a woman's silence. He doesn't measure his worth by her affection. And rejection doesn't break him. It sharpens his focus. That man stays on her mind long after he's gone silent. Why? Because he stopped orbiting her and started orbiting something greater, his mission. He doesn't walk behind her, hoping she'll choose him. He walks his path focused, calm, and determined. And if she wants in, she has to rise to his pace. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. See, the moment you make a woman your purpose, you lose your center. You give up building, stop evolving, and slowly fade into the background. You trade your dreams for attention. And worst of all, she starts to resent you for it. Because deep down, she doesn't want a man who puts her above all. She wants a man who had a life of purpose before she ever arrived. A man so complete that her presence feels like a reward, not a rescue. Your mission isn't some fallback. It's your foundation. When you're deeply locked into that mission, everything shifts. You don't sit by your phone waiting for a reply. You don't unravel when she grows distant. You're not shaken by cold texts or passive games. Why? Because your life is already full. You have purpose. You have drive. You have mountains to climb. She can either come along or be left behind. And if she chooses to leave, you don't fall apart. You rise. You take the pain and forge it into progress. You hit the gym harder. You build the business. You deepen your mindset, your faith, your presence. Because your worth was never tied to her love. It was always tied to your potential. And here's the irony. The second you stop chasing women, they begin chasing you. Not because you're playing games, but because you've become rare. You become a man who is not easily accessed. One who doesn't tolerate disrespect. One who doesn't need her to validate his masculinity. That kind of man doesn't wait. He doesn't beg. He doesn't need her, and she knows it. So stop placing her at the center. She's not your North Star. She's not the reason you wake up every morning. She is not the plan. She's the possible addition. Your growth is the real mission. Your soul's calling is the compass. And when you walk that path unapologetically, you don't lose women, you attract better ones. The kind who meet your energy, not the kind who drain it. There's a kind of strength few men talk about, not because it's weak, but because it's misunderstood. It's called detachment. And most people hear that word and assume it means apathy, that you're cold, distant, or shut off emotionally. But they're wrong. Detachment has nothing to do with being heartless. It has everything to do with having a heart that doesn't abandon itself. To detach doesn't mean you don't care about her. It means you don't need her affection to feel whole. You can love fully, feel deeply, and still walk away the moment your peace is threatened. It's not the absence of love. It's the presence of self-respect. Detachment is when you stop repainting red flags white, just because you're scared of being alone. It's not about shutting her out. It's about letting go of your need to control the outcome. Because when a man is emotionally detached, He doesn't fall apart when she pulls away. He doesn't panic at her silence. He doesn't overanalyze a change in tone or mood. He breathes. He observes. He stays anchored. And in that quiet strength, something shifts. She feels it. Detachment doesn't make you distant. It makes you dangerous in the best way. Not to her, but to the patterns that once made you small. You're no longer trying to win her back. You're no longer bleeding to prove your love. You're simply standing firm, acting in alignment with your values, not your emotions. And that's what changes the game. When you stop playing, she notices. When you stop reacting, she feels the silence. She second-guesses her manipulations. Because you're not dancing to her old tune anymore. You're no longer caught in the loop of over-explaining, over-giving, overstaying. Because you've stopped making love a performance. Now it's a choice, one that must be mutual, respected, and earned. Most men have been taught that being open emotionally is the path to connection. But emotional openness without boundaries is just self-sacrifice in disguise. It's like leaving your front door open and letting anyone walk in. Track mud through your soul. Tear things down, and you smile. Because that's what love does. Right, wrong. Real love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. Detachment says, I can love you and still walk away. I can forgive you and still choose distance. I can feel the pain and still protect my peace. That's not being cold. That's being clear. And when you become that man, grounded, still, and emotionally self-governed, she feels it. She starts wondering. She checks if you've seen her story. She replays your last message. Not because you're trying to manipulate her, but because you've become harder to reach, and she senses that your world no longer revolves around hers. You're not reacting anymore. You're not tearing yourself open for someone who wouldn't hand you a single bandage. That version of you, the one who bled endlessly just to be seen, is gone. Now, you are centered. You are whole. And you are no longer accessible through guilt, games, or confusion. She might regret losing you. She might respect you now. But either way, you didn't detach to hurt her. You detached to heal yourself. Brothers, let me tell you what nobody said when we were boys. You are the prize. Not because of your salary, or the badge on your car, or the symmetry of your jaw, but because of the man you are forging in your own furnace. Until that truth sinks into your bones, you will keep giving your worth away to women who never deserved an ounce of it. They taught you she was the trophy, and that you had to run marathons for her affection, act right, talk right, pay right, and maybe you would be rewarded with a ribbon of attention. Here is what they hid. The moment you place somebody else on the podium, you step down from the one you were born to stand on. You were never bred to compete. You were bred to lead. You are the prize when your purpose drives the engine. You are the prize when your word is iron. You are the prize when your boundaries refuse to fold. You are the prize when you choose restraint over cheap urges, discipline over instant validation. You are the prize when you stop picking women to hush your loneliness and start selecting from a place of wholeness. Yes, when you carry yourself that way, some will whisper that you're arrogant. Let them whisper. A man who finally values himself is a storm to any woman who once thrived by steering his insecurities. Suddenly, you are unpredictable, unreachable, unshakably attractive. Being the prize is not an ego trip. It is an energy state. The quiet gravity of a man full with or without applause, who needs no permission to feel masculine, who doesn't chase love because he knows he is love steady, rooted, silent. It shows in your shoulders, in the cadence of your voice, in the way you refuse to argue with disrespect, in the way you simply exit a room when nonsense tries to bargain for your time. When a man moves like that, everything around him tilts. She begins to question herself, staring at her reflection in your composure, realizing she is facing a mirror, not a mat. She tests, you don't fold. She withdraws, you don't chase. Losing her no longer scares you. Losing your own center does. And that fear is sacred. That fear forges kings. So, stop begging for a folding chair at her table. Build your own oak table and sit at its head. Stop holding your breath to be picked. Inhale and pick yourself. Remember, value isn't loud, it's consistent. It appears in small disciplines rising before dawn. Honoring promises no one audits. Lifting iron when no eye is watching. Reading pages that sharpen your mind. Each silent victory stacks into a presence money can't buy. The world senses it before you speak. Stand in rooms with squared shoulders and a clear conscience. That aura writes its own biography. Rewards chase identity, not the other way around. Men of substance are carved across seasons, not assembled overnight. Then watch what happens. You stop sprinting after affection, and you start attracting women who respect distance, honor standards, and rise to meet them. Because a real woman knows when a man walks like the prize, he never requests an audience. He is already seen, already felt. An unspoken verdict in every room he enters. There comes a silence in a man's life that doesn't come from defeat. It comes from awakening. It's the silence after the war inside him ends. When he finally stops explaining his worth to those who never truly listened. When he no longer fears losing her. Because now he fears losing the man he was always meant to become. That's the moment everything changes. He puts the phone down, not in anger, but in clarity. He stops chasing conversations that lead nowhere, stops writing paragraphs trying to make her understand, and instead, he begins building peace. He doesn't need her to say sorry. He doesn't need closure, because he has something more powerful: self-respect. He stands in front of the mirror and says, "No more shrinking myself to be accepted. No more proving my love to someone who refuses to receive it. No more begging to be chosen. Not because he's cold, but because he's finally warm with his own truth." And when that shift happens, the world notices. The women who ghosted him come back. The ones who toyed with his heart suddenly remember him. But this time, they're not met with the same man. He's different now, slower, sharper, rooted, not bitter, just rebuilt. Because he finally remembered the truth. They tried to make him forget. He was the prize all along. So now, he doesn't yell. He doesn't argue. He doesn't announce his departure. He leaves quietly, with calm, with power, with dignity. And when people ask what happened to him, he simply says, "I stopped begging to be loved, and started loving myself like my life depended on it." Because it does. To every man hearing this, if this message stirred something in you, this is your line in the sand. This is your rebirth. Walk away from anyone or anything that makes you forget your value. Walk toward the man you're becoming. Walk like the prize you are. And let your silence speak volumes. If this woke something up inside you, drop a comment below. I choose me. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Not just for content, but for truth, for clarity, for daily reminders that you were never meant to perform for love. You were meant to embody it.